I watched Linda Becker's white SUV roll up to my gate for the third time that week. She stepped out, clipboard in hand, and marched straight to the property line like she owned it. Her voice was sharp and certain as she rattled off some new HOA violation I'd supposedly committed. I let her finish, then said the only thing that mattered. My land. My rules. Her face went rigid. For a second, she just stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then her voice climbed an octave. You don't get to decide that this is a community, and you will follow our standards. She jabbed her finger toward my yard, her composure cracking with every word. I didn't argue back. I'd learned that arguments don't hold up in court, but timestamps do. I opened my notes app and logged the date, time, and her exact words while the Ring camera captured everything from behind me. She had no idea I'd been building a case file since her first visit. If you're dealing with your own neighborhood power trip, drop a comment below. This is about to get interesting. My mornings used to be quiet. I'd wake up at 7, make coffee, and settle into my home office by 8. The 5 acres I owned sat far enough from the main road that I could leave my windows open and hear nothing but wind through the pines. I bought the property 3 years ago for that piece. The deed was clear. My land wasn't part of the Whispering Pines HOA. The subdivision bordered my fence, but no covenants applied to my lot. I had the paperwork in my filing cabinet, highlighted and ready. I thought that would be enough. The first sign came on a Tuesday in early April. I was refilling my coffee when I heard a car engine near my gate. A white SUV sat outside the fence. A woman in her 50s stepped out, walked to my gate, and taped a paper to the bars. She smoothed it down, got back in her car, and left. I walked outside and pulled it off. Violation notice. Grass exceeds 4 inches. Mow within 72 hours or face a $100 fine. Signed by Linda Becker, HOA president. At the top, she'd written in pen, Ethan Ross, 42 Pine Ridge Road. She knew my name. She'd looked me up. I could have thrown it away, but the certainty in how she'd taped it there told me this wouldn't be the last time. So I started a file. I photographed the notice with a timestamp, opened my notes app, and created evidence log, Ethan Ross versus HOA harassment. First entry, April 9th, 8:15 a.m. Linda Becker placed a violation notice, saved to cloud folder. I pulled the deed from my cabinet and set it on my desk. 1 page, 1 highlighted sentence. That was all I'd need to prove jurisdiction. 2 days later, she returned. I was trimming a hedge when her SUV pulled up. She rolled down her window. Mr. Ross, can I have a moment? So she knew my name, and now she was using it like we had some kind of professional relationship. I walked over. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm Linda Becker, HOA president. I wanted to follow up on the notice. Our standards require grass below 4 inches to maintain property values for the community. I pointed to the sign I'd installed that morning. Private property, not part of HOA. Black letters, white aluminum, mounted by the gate. She glanced at it, then back at me. I understand you might feel that way, Mr. Ross, but your property borders our community. What you do affects all of us. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the photo of my deed. I held it up so she could see the highlighted section. This property is not subject to HOA covenants. It's in the legal record. If you want to dispute that, contact the county clerk. Something shifted in her posture. She sat straighter, lips pressed thin. We'll see about that, she said, then drove off. I logged the time and her exact words, verified that the Ring footage had captured everything. She didn't know I was building something. It was later that same week when everything escalated. The board visit had happened in between, 3 of them showing up on a Saturday, trying the friendly approach. But it was the solo visit on Friday morning that showed me who Linda Becker really was. I was on my porch with coffee when her white SUV rolled up again. This time she didn't bother with pleasantries. She stepped out, clipboard in hand, and marched straight to the property line. Her voice was sharp from the start. Mr. Ross, I need to inform you that the HOA has documented multiple violations. You are required to comply with community standards regardless of what you think your paperwork says. I set my cup down and walked to the gate. I let her finish her whole speech, let her think she had the upper hand. Then I said the only thing that mattered. My land, my rules. Her face went rigid. For a second, She just stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then her voice climbed an octave, and all that professional composure cracked wide open. "You don't get to decide that this is a community, and you will follow our standards." She jabbed her finger toward my yard, her face flushing. "I don't care what some piece of paper says. You live here. You follow the rules." I didn't argue back. I just opened my notes app and started typing while she kept going. The Ring camera caught every word. When she finally ran out of steam, she glared at me one more time and then got back in her SUV and peeled out. Gravel spitting from her tires. I stood there for a moment, phone still in my hand, watching the dust settle. Then I went inside and logged the incident in detail. Third solo confrontation. The subject became verbally aggressive when the boundary was reasserted. Exact quote documented. Footage saved. Then I opened my drafts folder and pulled up the email I'd written to Marcus Webb, a property lawyer from my college days. I added one line. "Marcus, this is Ethan Ross. Situation escalating. The HOA president is dismissing legal boundaries and becoming aggressive. May need formal consultation soon." I still didn't send it, but I moved it to a folder labeled Ready to Send, because Linda Becker had just shown me exactly who she was, and I had a feeling she was just getting started. Linda didn't come back for 4 days. I thought maybe the confrontation had been enough. But on Tuesday afternoon, I got an email. Subject line, HOA compliance, final notice. I opened it at my desk. The message was formal, almost corporate. "Dear Mr. Ross, this is your final notice regarding multiple violations of Whispering Pines community standards. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in escalated action, including potential legal proceedings. Sincerely, Linda Becker, President, Whispering Pines Board." I read it 3 times, looking for specifics. What violations? What standards? Nothing concrete, just vague threats in polite language. I took a screenshot showing full headers and added it to my evidence folder with a timestamp note. April 18th, 2:14 p.m. Threatening email. No violations cited. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked up the Texas Property Code sections on HOAs. I wanted to know exactly what authority they had and what they didn't. It took an hour, but I found it. HOAs only have jurisdiction over properties explicitly part of the association through deed or covenant. They can't claim authority just because a property is nearby. I bookmarked the statute and saved a PDF. That evening, I wrote a response. Short, factual, emotionless. Ms. Becker, I received your email dated April 18th. As stated previously, my property at 42 Pine Ridge Road is not subject to Whispering Pines HOA covenants, confirmed by recorded deed with Tarrant County. Please direct future communication through certified mail or legal counsel. Sincerely, Ethan Ross. I let it sit overnight, reread it in the morning to make sure every word was defensible, then sent it at 8 a.m. exactly. Her response came 90 minutes later, and the tone had shifted completely. "Mr. Ross, you seem to misunderstand how community standards work. This isn't about technicalities. It's about being a good neighbor and respecting the people around you. We have tried to work with you, but your attitude has made that impossible. The board will be meeting on Thursday to discuss next steps. You are not required to attend, but you may regret not taking this opportunity to resolve things amicably." I could see the mask slipping, from professional authority to personal judgment. The phrase "you may regret" wasn't legal language. It was a threat. I saved the email and logged the escalation with detail. She was moving from procedure to intimidation. Thursday came, and I didn't go to the meeting. I wasn't part of the HOA, and showing up would only legitimize their authority. I stayed home and worked. Around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is David Marsh from the HOA board. Just wanted to reach out after tonight's meeting. Things got heated. Linda is upset about your lack of cooperation. I think if you just came to one meeting and explained your position, we could smooth this over." I stared at it. David had been one of the 3 at my gate earlier. He'd seemed reasonable then, but this felt coordinated. Linda pushes hard, and David plays mediator. Good cop, bad cop. I documented the text with a note about timing and tone. then drafted a careful response. David, I appreciate you reaching out. However, my position is clear and legally sound. I have no reason to attend meetings for an organization I'm not part of. If the board has concerns, they should address them through proper legal channels. Ethan. I sent it and turned my phone face down. 3 minutes later, he replied, I understand. Ethan, just trying to keep things neighborly. Linda can be intense, but she really does care about the community. Hope we can find a way forward. I didn't respond. The word neighborly was the same frame Linda had used. Social obligation instead of legal fact. I added both texts to my log and wrote a single observation. Pattern identified building a narrative of an uncooperative neighbor. The next day, I made a decision. Email and text were too easy to dismiss or misrepresent. I needed something that required acknowledgement. I drafted a certified letter, the kind that demands a signature and creates an official record. To the Whispering Pines HOA Board, this letter serves as formal notice that the property at 42 Pine Ridge Road is not subject to any covenants of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. This has been confirmed by recorded deed and county records. Further contact regarding alleged violations constitutes harassment under Texas Penal Code, Section 442-7. I request all communications cease unless it pertains to legitimate legal matters directed through counsel. All prior correspondence has been retained. Sincerely, Ethan Ross. I printed 3 copies, one for my file, one to send, one sealed as an unaltered backup. I drove to the post office and sent it certified mail with a return receipt requested. The clerk handed me the tracking number, and I photographed it before I even left the counter. When Linda signed for that envelope, there would be a record she couldn't deny. No room for claims of misunderstanding. The line was drawn in ink now, official and permanent. That weekend was silent. No emails, no texts, no white SUV rolling up to my gate. The quiet felt tactical, like they were deciding how to respond now that I'd escalated to a formal legal notice. I used the time to build something more comprehensive. I created a timeline document that laid out every interaction from the first violation notice to the certified letter. Each entry included date, time, type of contact, and exact quotes where I had them. Then I cross-referenced each one with its evidence file screenshots, ring footage, photos, and the return receipt still pending. 12 separate contacts in less than 2 weeks. The pattern was unmistakable. Escalation from passive notes to email threats to personal outreach to what I knew would come next. If this ended up in front of a judge, the story would tell itself. I wasn't the aggressor. I was just the one keeping score. Monday morning, the notification arrived. Certified letter delivered and signed for at 9:18 a.m. Linda Becker's signature was right there on the digital receipt. Clear and undeniable. I saved it immediately and updated my timeline with the final confirmation. Formal notice delivered and acknowledged. Everything was documented now. Every step I'd taken had been measured, polite, and legally sound. I hadn't yelled, hadn't threatened, hadn't given them anything they could twist into justification. I'd simply drawn a boundary and refused to move it. And now Linda knew exactly where that boundary was. The question was whether she'd respect it or whether she'd do what people like her always do when someone says no. Double down. The silence lasted 4 days. Then the emails started coming in groups, not from Linda directly, but from an address I didn't recognize. info@whisperingpineshoa.org. The first one arrived Friday morning with the subject line, Easement Access Request. I opened it and felt something shift in my chest. Not panic, just recognition. They were changing tactics. Dear Mr. Ross, the Whispering Pines HOA Board respectfully requests permission to establish a temporary easement across the northeast portion of your property to facilitate maintenance access to common area drainage infrastructure. This access would benefit the entire community and help prevent flooding issues that could affect your property as well. Please respond within 10 business days to schedule a site survey. Regards, Whispering Pines HOA Management. I read it twice, then opened a satellite map of my property on my computer. The northeast corner bordered the subdivision's retention pond, but there was no drainage infrastructure on my land. None, I'd walked every inch of those 5 acres when I bought the place. There was nothing there that belonged to the HOA or served any common area. I pulled up the county's GIS system and checked the utility easements on record. 0 easements crossing my property. Not for drainage, not for utilities, nothing. This wasn't a legitimate request. It was a test. They wanted to see if I'd give them access voluntarily, create a precedent they could build on later. I saved the email with a screenshot of the county GIS map showing no recorded easements and added both to my evidence folder. Before I could decide how to respond, another email came through. Same address, different subject. Community Standards Compliance Update. I opened it with growing suspicion. Dear residents, the HOA board would like to remind all property owners in and adjacent to Whispering Pines that maintaining community standards is a shared responsibility. Recent concerns have been raised about properties that do not meet our established guidelines for lawn maintenance, exterior appearance, and neighborhood aesthetics. We appreciate the cooperation of residents who take pride in our community. It didn't mention me by name, but the timing wasn't coincidental. They were sending this to their entire mailing list, and somehow I'd been added to it. They were building a public narrative before I'd even responded to the easement request. I spent the next hour doing something I should have done earlier. I called the Tarrant County Clerk's office and asked to speak with someone in the Property Records Division. A woman named Patricia answered. I explained my situation in simple terms. My property borders an HOA subdivision. They're claiming I need to comply with their rules, and now they're requesting an easement that doesn't exist on record. Could she confirm what's actually filed? Patricia put me on hold for 5 minutes, then came back with exactly what I needed. Mr. Ross, I'm looking at your property record right now. Parcel number 44578201903. No HOA covenants recorded. No easements of any kind. If someone wants to establish an easement, they'd need either your written consent or a court order. They can't just request it and assume you'll comply. I thanked her and asked if she could email me an official confirmation. She said she'd send a certified property report within 2 business days. I hung up and immediately logged the call. April 28, 10:40 a.m. Spoke with Patricia Martinez at the Tarrant County Clerk's office. Confirmed 0 easements on record. Official report pending. Then I drafted my response to the easement email, keeping it as clinical as the request they'd sent. To Whispering Pines HOA Management, I received your request dated April 28th regarding easement access. I have confirmed with Tarrant County Property Records that no easements exist on my property, recorded or otherwise. I do not consent to any access, survey, or temporary use of my land. This decision is final. Please remove my email address from your distribution lists, as I am not a member of your organization. Ethan Ross. I sent it and watched my inbox. Within an hour, I got a reply. Not from the management address, but from Linda Becker's personal email. The professional mask was slipping again. Ethan, I'm disappointed you're choosing to be difficult about this. The drainage issue affects everyone in the area, including you. Refusing to cooperate makes you look selfish and hostile to your neighbors. The board has been very patient, but that patience has limits. We will explore all available options to ensure community standards are maintained. Linda, I read it 3 times, focusing on one phrase. All available options. That wasn't about drainage anymore. That was about control. I saved the email and noted the shift from organizational request to personal pressure. She was getting frustrated, and frustrated people make mistakes. That evening, I was in my kitchen making dinner when I heard voices outside. Not at the gate this time. Farther out, near the back corner of my property, where the fence line met the wooded area. I grabbed my phone and walked toward the sound. The sun was low, casting long shadows through the pines. When I got close enough to see clearly, I stopped. Linda was there with 2 men I didn't recognize. One was holding a measuring wheel. The other had a clipboard. They were on my side of the fence, 20 feet onto my property, looking at the ground and talking. I pulled out my phone and started recording video before I said anything. I wanted this documented from the first second. I walked closer, and Linda saw me. She didn't look surprised or embarrassed. She looked annoyed that I'd interrupted. "Mr. Ross?" she said, like she was greeting me at a business meeting. We're just doing a preliminary survey of the drainage concerns we emailed you about. I kept the phone recording and spoke clearly. You're on private property without permission. This is trespassing. One of the men looked uncomfortable and started to back toward the fence. The other one glanced at Linda like he was waiting for instructions. Linda's expression hardened. We have a right to assess community infrastructure. This affects public safety. I didn't argue with her logic. I just repeated the facts. You are trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the sheriff. The two men didn't wait for Linda's approval. They walked quickly back toward the fence and climbed over where someone had bent the wire down to make it easier to cross. Linda stood there for another 10 seconds, staring at me like she was deciding whether to push further. Then she turned and followed them without another word. I kept recording until all three of them were out of sight. Then I walked back to the house and immediately called the Tarrant County Sheriff's non-emergency line. The dispatcher asked if the individuals were still on the property. I said no, but I had video evidence of the trespass and wanted to file a report. She said a deputy would come by within the hour. Deputy Hernandez arrived 40 minutes later. I showed him my property deed first, then the video on my phone. He watched the whole thing, nodding occasionally. You asked them to leave. They complied. That's good. But yeah, this is trespassing. You want me to file an official report? I said yes. He pulled out a tablet and started typing. He asked for names, and I gave him Linda Becker's name and explained her role as HOA president. I didn't know the two men's names, but I had them on video. Deputy Hernandez took a copy of the video file via airdrop and gave me an incident report number. Keep documenting everything, he said. If they come back, call 911 immediately, not the non-emergency line. Trespassing after being warned is a stronger charge. I thanked him and walked him back to his patrol car. After he left, I sat down at my computer and updated my evidence log. April 28, 6:20 p.m. Linda Becker and two unidentified men trespassed on the property. Video recorded. Sheriff's report filed. Incident number TC 50428-847. Deputy advised escalation if repeated. Then I opened my email and wrote to Marcus Webb, the property lawyer. This time, I didn't save it as a draft. I sent it. Marcus, this is Ethan Ross. We went to school together. You're doing property law in Dallas now. I need a consultation on HOA overreach and trespassing in Tarrant County. The situation has escalated beyond warnings. I have documentation. Let me know your availability. I hit send and closed the laptop. Linda Becker had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and I had every second of it on video. Marcus Webb called me back Saturday afternoon. I was outside replacing fence wire that had been bent down where Linda's crew had climbed through. My phone buzzed, and I pulled off my gloves. Ethan Ross. His voice was steady, the same as I remembered from college. Marcus. Yeah, thanks for getting back so fast. He didn't waste time. I got your email. HOA overreach and trespassing. Tell me what's happening. I gave him the summary, keeping it factual. Property not part of HOA. Repeated contact escalating to threats. Fake easement request. Trespassing with video evidence. He listened without interrupting, then asked one question. Do you have everything documented? I told him yes. Timeline, emails, ring footage, sheriff reports. He was quiet, then said, Good. Send me everything. I want a review before we talk strategy. I spent 2 hours organizing files, screenshots, videos, the deed, county records, incident reports. I labeled everything by date, compressed it, and emailed it to Marcus. He replied within 30 minutes. Received. I'll review this weekend and call Monday. Do not engage with them directly. If they contact you, document but don't respond. If they trespass again, call 911 immediately. You're building a strong case. Let them keep making mistakes. I read his message twice and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. I wasn't overreacting. This was serious, and I was handling it right. Sunday was quiet. I worked in the yard, kept an eye on ring notifications. Nothing unusual. No SUV, no emails. The silence felt different this time, like Linda was regrouping after the sheriff's visit. I used the time to install 2 more cameras, one facing the back corner where they'd trespassed, one covering the side gate. I wanted full perimeter coverage. If anyone came back, I'd have multiple angles. By evening, all 3 cameras were synced to cloud storage and recording on motion detection. I tested each one and confirmed coverage. It felt like overkill, but Marcus's words stayed with me. Let them keep making mistakes. Monday morning, Marcus called at 9:15. I reviewed everything. You've done good work. Clean documentation, no emotional outbursts. Clear boundaries stated repeatedly. Legally, you're in a strong position. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad. What's next? Marcus didn't hesitate. We send one more letter. Formal. Attorney signed. Outlining facts and consequences. A cease and desist. It puts them on notice that continued contact or trespassing results in legal action, including restraining orders and civil suits. Most people back off. If they don't, we have everything to file. He paused. I'll draft it today. Once you approve, I'll send it certified to Linda personally and the HOA board. No one can claim they didn't know. 2 hours later, Marcus emailed a draft. 3 pages, single-spaced, no punches pulled. It outlined every incident with dates, cited Texas Penal Code sections on harassment and trespassing, referenced sheriff reports, and stated clearly my property had no HOA connection. The final paragraph was the hammer. Any further contact, entry, or attempts to assert false authority will be met with immediate legal action, including restraining orders, civil damages, and referral to Tarrant County DA for criminal trespass charges. Final notice. I read it 3 times, made 1 date clarification, sent it back. Marcus replied, "Perfect. Sending tomorrow certified. Should arrive Thursday." That night I went to bed early. I was tired from the mental weight of staying ahead. I fell asleep around 10:30 and woke to my phone buzzing. 2:15 a.m. Ring alert. Motion detected. Back corner. I opened the app. Disoriented. The infrared footage showed 2 figures moving along the fence line where Linda had trespassed before. One held a flashlight. I watched as they approached the fence section I'd repaired that morning. One knelt and started working on the wire with a tool. Bolt cutters. Maybe. I didn't go outside. I grabbed my phone, opened the second camera angle, and started screen recording both feeds. Then I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my voice calm. This is Ethan Ross at 42 Pine Ridge Road. 2 individuals trespassing right now, attempting to cut my fence. I have them on camera. I'm inside, not engaging. Need deputies immediately. She asked if I could see them. I said no, watching on security cameras. She told me to stay inside. Keep doors locked. Keep the line open. Deputies were being dispatched. I watched the screen. The 2 figures worked another minute. Then one straightened and said something I couldn't hear. They climbed over and walked onto my property with flashlights, sweeping the ground. One short and stocky in a dark jacket. One taller in a hoodie. I didn't recognize either from the earlier trespass. These were different people. The dispatcher asked if they were still on the property. I said yes, moving toward the back corner, about 50 feet from the house. She said deputies were 3 minutes out. The figures moved deeper, flashlights scanning. One stopped and pointed at something on the ground. They both crouched. I zoomed the camera feed but couldn't see clearly. Then I heard sirens. The figures heard them too. They stood fast, turned off flashlights, and ran toward the fence. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. They didn't climb, just pushed through the gap they'd made and disappeared into the subdivision. I kept recording until the camera showed an empty yard and a swaying fence. A knock came 30 seconds later. I ended the 911 call and walked to the door. 2 deputies stood on my porch. Deputy Rawlings introduced himself. Same department as Hernandez. I'd already pulled up the footage. They left a minute ago. Went through the fence into the subdivision. I have it recorded from 2 angles. Rawlings asked me to send the footage. I airdropped both files to his phone. He watched quickly, then looked at his partner. We need to canvass the subdivision. He turned back. Did you recognize either? I said no, different from the previous incident. He noted it. We'll check and file a report. This is the 2nd incident in 4 days, correct? I confirmed. He nodded. I'll note that. This is escalating. After they left, I walked to the back corner with my own flashlight. The fence had clean cuts through 3 wire strands. Deliberate. I photographed from multiple angles, then looked where the figures had crouched. Boot prints in soft dirt. And something else. Small wooden stakes with orange tape. Survey markers. They'd tried to plant survey markers on my property in the middle of the night. I photographed everything, went inside, and updated my log. May 2nd, 2:15 a.m. 2 unidentified individuals trespassed, cut the fence, and attempted to remove survey markers. 911 called. Deputies responded. Footage saved. 2 cameras. Report pending. Then I emailed Marcus with footage attached. 1 line. They escalated to criminal destruction and nighttime trespass. I have everything on video. Marcus's cease and desist letter arrived Thursday morning. I got the tracking notification while making coffee. Certified mail delivered to Linda Becker at 9:42 a.m. Signature confirmed. I zoomed in on the signature image. Her handwriting was tight and angular, pressed hard like she was trying to break the screen. I saved the screenshot and forwarded it to Marcus. Delivered, he replied within minutes. Good. Now we wait. If she's smart, she'll back off. If not, we'll have more ammunition. I didn't think Linda was the type to back off. By noon, I started seeing signs she'd received it. My phone buzzed with a notification from a neighborhood social platform I'd joined years ago for local updates. I rarely checked it, but the notification said I'd been mentioned. I opened the app and saw Linda's name at the top of my feed. Posted 20 minutes earlier, already 15 comments. Community update. It's unfortunate when one person's refusal to cooperate affects everyone else. Despite multiple attempts to work collaboratively, some neighbors choose conflict over community. The HOAs is exploring all legal options to protect property values for residents who actually care about Whispering Pines. We appreciate those who understand what it means to be part of something bigger. I read it twice, taking in the careful wording. She didn't mention me by name, but anyone paying attention would know. The comments mixed support and confusion. What's going on? Some people just don't want to be good neighbors. But there were others. Wait, who are you talking about? Is this about the property that's not in the HOA? There's more to this story. I took screenshots of everything, added them to my evidence folder, and then did something I'd been avoiding. I created my own post. I kept it factual and emotionless. For those asking about recent tensions, my property at 42 Pine Ridge Road is not part of Whispering Pines HOA. This has been confirmed by county records and my deed. I have been contacted repeatedly by the HOA requesting compliance with rules that do not apply. I declined politely with legal documentation. Despite this, there have been 2 trespassing incidents on my property, both documented with video and sheriff reports. I am not refusing to cooperate. I am asserting legal property rights. All documents are on file with the county and my attorney. I didn't attach evidence. The statement was enough to shift the narrative from opinion to verifiable fact. I posted it and set my phone down. Within 5 minutes, comments started coming. Wait, your property isn't in the HOA. So the HOA's been harassing you for no reason. Do you have proof? I didn't reply. I just let the post exist. A counterweight to Linda's vague accusations. Then I saw a comment from David Marsh, the board member who'd texted me weeks ago. I can confirm Ethan's property is not part of the HOA. I've seen the deed. There's been confusion on the board about jurisdiction. David had just contradicted Linda publicly. That was significant. More comments piled on. If his property isn't in the HOA, why bother him? This seems like overreach. One stood out. I'm on the HOA board and didn't know about trespassing incidents. When did this happen? Karen Levine, the woman from that first group visit. She sounded genuinely surprised. I took more screenshots and logged everything. May 4th, 12:15 p.m. Linda posted vague accusation. I responded with facts. David confirmed property status publicly. Karen expressed lack of knowledge. Community reaction shifting. My phone rang an hour later. Unknown number. Local area code. This is Ethan. A woman's voice. Hesitant. Mr. Ross, this is Karen Levine from the HOA board. I saw your post. I think there's been serious miscommunication. I didn't know about any trespassing. Linda told us you were being difficult, but never mentioned your property isn't in the HOA. I feel misled. I kept my tone neutral. I appreciate you calling, but I'm not interested in mediating through individual board members. I've provided documentation to the HOA as a whole. If there's miscommunication, that's internal for your board to resolve. Karen was quiet, then said, I just wanted you to know not everyone supports how this has been handled. Some of us are concerned about Linda's approach. I made a note, but didn't take the bait. If you have concerns about board operations, address them through official channels. I've retained legal counsel. All communication should go through my attorney. I gave her Marcus's information, thanked her, and ended the call. Then I logged it. May 4th, 1:30 p.m. Karen called expressing concerns about Linda's actions and lack of transparency. Referred to attorney. Internal conflict developing. By evening, Linda had deleted her post. I still had screenshots. The removal told me something. She'd overplayed her hand and realized it. The comments had turned against her, and board members were questioning her publicly. I checked the platform again and saw a new post from David Marsh. HOA board meeting announcement special session Saturday, May 6th at 10 a.m., Community Center. All residents welcome. Agenda includes review of jurisdiction, recent complaints, and transparency concerns. Public comment period provided. That was fast. Linda had lost control of the narrative. I forwarded the announcement to Marcus. He called 5 minutes later. Did you see this? I told him yes. He sounded cautiously optimistic. This is good. Public meetings mean public record. If they justify their actions, they'll do it in front of witnesses. If they admit fault, even better. We want you there, not to speak unless necessary, but to observe and document. I agreed. Marcus continued. Bring a notebook. Take detailed notes. If they mention your property, write it verbatim. If they discuss trespassing, note who says what. This could be the turning point. Friday was quiet. No emails, no visits, no posts. The calm before the storm. I spent the day reviewing everything. The evidence log was now 4 pages, single-spaced, 37 separate incidents over 3 weeks. The pattern was undeniable. Escalation from notes to harassment to criminal acts. I printed the entire log, highlighted key entries, and put it in a folder labeled HOA harassment case, complete timeline. Then I printed the most important evidence: deed, county map, sheriff reports, ring screenshots, social media posts. I organized everything chronologically in a 3-ring binder. If the meeting turned confrontational, I wanted immediate access to any document. Saturday morning. I woke at 7 and made strong coffee. The meeting was at 10. I wanted to arrive early to observe who showed up and where they positioned themselves. I dressed in professional casual, dark jeans, button-down shirt. I grabbed the binder, notebook, 2 pens, and my fully charged phone. Then I did one more thing. I opened my voice recorder app and started a new recording. HOA meeting, May 6, 2025. I slipped the phone in my shirt pocket, microphone facing out. If this was going to be public record, I was making my own copy. I arrived at the community center at 9:30, half an hour before the meeting was scheduled to start. The parking lot was already filling up. I recognized several cars from the subdivision, including Linda's white SUV parked near the entrance like she owned the building. I parked toward the back, away from the clusters of people gathering near the doors. I wanted to observe before engaging. I grabbed my binder and notebook, checked that my phone was recording in my pocket, and walked toward the entrance. A few people glanced at me as I passed, but no one said anything. I could feel the tension in the air, the kind that comes before something important happens. The community center was a single-story building with a large main room used for events. Folding chairs had been set up in rows facing a table at the front where the board would sit. I counted about 40 chairs, and half of them were already occupied. I chose a seat in the 3rd row, off to the side where I had a clear view of both the board table and the audience. I set my binder on the chair next to me and opened my notebook to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote the date, time, and location. Then I waited and watched. People filtered in slowly, some alone, some in pairs. I recognized David Marsh when he walked in. He saw me, gave a slight nod, and took a seat near the front. Karen Levine arrived a few minutes later with an older man I didn't recognize. She looked nervous, clutching a folder against her chest. At 9:55, Linda walked in with 2 other board members I'd seen in photos on the HOA website, but never met in person. She didn't look at me, but I could tell she knew I was there. Her posture was stiff, her expression locked into what I guessed was her version of professional composure. They took their seats at the front table, Linda in the center chair. She shuffled some papers, whispered something to the man on her left, and then looked out at the audience. The room had filled up. I counted 53 people. Standing room only in the back. This was the biggest turnout I'd ever seen for an HOA meeting, and everyone knew why. Linda called the meeting to order at exactly 10 a.m. Her voice was loud and clear, amplified by the acoustics of the room. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this special session of the Whispering Pines HOA Board. We have several important items on the agenda today, and we'll be allowing time for public comment at the end. I'd like to start by addressing some recent concerns that have been raised regarding board jurisdiction and communication." She paused, looking down at her notes. "The board takes transparency very seriously. We want to make sure that all residents understand the rules and guidelines that govern our community, and we want to address any confusion that may have arisen." I wrote down her opening statement word for word. 10:02 a.m. Linda emphasizes transparency and addressing confusion. She continued, "As many of you know, there has been some discussion recently about a property adjacent to Whispering Pines that is not technically part of the HOA. I want to clarify that while this property is not bound by our covenants, it does border our community, and actions taken on that property can affect all of us. The board has been working to establish cooperative dialogue with the property owner to ensure that shared concerns, such as drainage and property maintenance, are addressed in a way that benefits everyone." I underlined the phrase cooperative dialogue. That wasn't how I'd describe what had been happening. David Marsh raised his hand from the front row. Linda looked at him with visible irritation. "David, we'll have time for discussion after I finish the overview." David didn't lower his hand. "Linda, I think we need to address this now. The board has not been working to establish cooperative dialogue. The board, or at least parts of it, has been pressuring a property owner who has no legal obligation to comply with HOA rules. I've seen the documentation, I've seen the deed, and I was not informed about incidents that should have been reported to the full board." The room went completely silent. Linda's face flushed. "David, this is not the time or place for internal disputes. We can discuss board procedures in executive session." David stood up. "No, Linda, this is exactly the time and place. This is a public meeting, and the public deserves to know what's been happening. Mr. Ross has been harassed. His property has been trespassed on twice, and some of those actions were taken without full board approval or knowledge. I didn't know about the trespassing incidents until I saw his post online. Karen didn't either." Karen Levine nodded from her seat, and I saw her hands shaking slightly as she clutched her folder. Linda's voice rose. "That is a gross mischaracterization of events. The board has been acting in the best interest of the community. If Mr. Ross had been willing to cooperate from the beginning, none of this would have been necessary." David Marsh confronts Linda publicly about lack of board knowledge. Linda deflects, claims community interest. The man sitting next to Linda at the board table, an older gentleman with gray hair, cleared his throat. "Linda, I think we need to hear from Mr. Ross. He's here, and he has documents. Maybe we should allow him to present his side before we continue." Linda looked like she wanted to argue, but the room was watching her. She gestured toward me with a tight smile. "Fine. Mr. Ross, if you'd like to address the board, now would be the time." I stood up, grabbed my binder, and walked to the front of the room. I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I opened the binder and held up the property deed so everyone could see the highlighted section. "Thank you. My name is Ethan Ross, and I own the property at 42 Pine Ridge Road. This deed, recorded with Tarrant County, confirms my property is not subject to any covenants of the Whispering Pines HOA. The county clerk's office has provided official documentation to that effect." I turned to the timeline page without pausing. Since April 9th, I have been contacted by the HOA 37 times. Emails, texts, in-person visits, certified letters, and 2 trespassing incidents. Every interaction is documented with timestamps, video evidence, and sheriff reports. I pointed to the incident entries. The first trespass occurred April 28th. Ms. Becker and 2 unidentified men entered my property without permission after I denied an easement request. I have video footage and a sheriff's report. The second incident occurred on May 2nd at 2:15 a.m. 2 individuals cut through my fence and attempted to place survey markers on my land. I have infrared camera footage from 2 angles and a 911 response. I flipped to the social media screenshots. Yesterday, Ms. Becker posted online, accusing me of refusing to cooperate, without mentioning that my property has no legal obligation to comply. Multiple board members have since expressed concern about how this was handled. I closed the binder and looked directly at Linda. I'm not here to attack anyone. I'm here to set the record straight. I have asserted my legal rights politely and professionally. I have been met with escalating harassment, trespassing, and public defamation. A cease and desist letter was delivered on Thursday. I'm willing to coexist peacefully, but I will not be bullied into giving up my rights. The room erupted in murmurs and whispered conversations. People turned to each other, some nodding, some looking shocked. Linda sat frozen, her face pale now instead of flushed. David Marsh stood again. Linda, I move that the board issue a formal apology to Mr. Ross and cease all contact with his property unless he initiates it. Furthermore, I move that we conduct an internal audit of any expenditures related to this matter, including payments made to contractors or surveyors without full board approval. Karen Levine stood as well. I second that motion. Linda looked around the table at the other board members. The older man with gray hair was nodding. The woman on her right looked uncomfortable, but didn't object. Linda's voice was barely above a whisper. This is highly irregular. We should discuss this in executive session. David shook his head. No, Linda, we're discussing it now, in public, because that's what transparency looks like. All in favor of the motion. David, Karen, and the gray-haired man raised their hands. The woman on Linda's right hesitated, then raised hers too. 4 out of 5. Linda sat there, outvoted and exposed. Motion carries, David said. He looked at me. Mr. Ross, on behalf of the board, I apologize for the way this has been handled. You have our commitment that there will be no further contact from the HOA regarding your property. I nodded, then returned to my seat. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, mostly procedural discussions about the audit and next steps for board reorganization. Linda said almost nothing. When the meeting finally adjourned, people came up to me. Some apologized, some thanked me for standing up, and some asked questions about the evidence. David approached last. Can we talk outside for a minute? I followed him out to the parking lot, away from the crowd. He handed me a flash drive. This is everything I could access as a board member. Internal emails, budget documents, and contractor invoices that went through the shared board system. Linda's been running her own show for months, and some of it doesn't add up. I think you should have this. Your lawyer might find it useful. I took the flash drive and slipped it into my pocket. Why are you doing this? David looked tired. Because it's the right thing to do, and because I'm tired of watching someone abuse power just because they can. Marcus called me Monday morning while I was transferring the contents of David's flash drive to my computer. I heard about the meeting. David Marsh sent me an email yesterday summarizing what happened. Sounds like it went better than expected. I plugged in an external hard drive to back up the files. It went exactly as it needed to. Linda got outvoted publicly. The board apologized, and David gave me internal documents. I'm looking at them now. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, What kind of documents? I clicked through the folder structure. Emails, spreadsheets, scanned invoices, meeting minutes, budget records, contractor payments, correspondence between Linda and vendors. David said some of it doesn't add up. Marcus's tone shifted. Don't touch anything else until I see it. Send me everything exactly as you received it. If there's financial misconduct here, we need to handle it carefully. This could go beyond harassment into fraud territory. I stopped scrolling and closed the folder. I'll upload it to a secure share link and send it to you in the next hour. Marcus confirmed. Good. In the meantime, write down everything that happened at that meeting. Every word you remember from Linda, from David, from the vote, Timestamps if you have them. Your recording will help, but I want your written account while it's fresh. If this escalates to legal proceedings, your testimony about that public meeting could be critical. I spent the rest of the morning transcribing the voice recording and cross-referencing it with my handwritten notes. Linda's opening statement about transparency, David's public challenge, my presentation of evidence, the motion, the second, the vote, 4 hands raised, Linda sitting silent and outvoted. I typed it all into a document, formatted it like a deposition transcript, and saved it with the date and my signature at the bottom. Then I uploaded David's flash drive contents to an encrypted cloud folder and sent Marcus the access link. By noon, I'd done everything he asked. I made lunch, then sat on my back porch with coffee and let myself breathe for the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Ross, this is Patricia Martinez from the Tarrant County Clerk's office. I wanted to follow up on the property report I sent you a few weeks ago. I've been getting calls from someone claiming to represent the Whispering Pines HOA, asking about easements on your property. I told them what I told you. No easements on record. They asked if there was any way to contest that. I said only through court order or your written consent. I thought you should know they're still trying. I read the text twice, then forwarded it to Marcus with a note. Even after the public meeting, she's still trying to find a way in. Marcus replied within minutes. Not surprising. People like her don't give up just because they lose one battle. But this is good for us. It shows a pattern of continued harassment even after being formally told to stop. Keep documenting. If she makes any direct contact with you, do not respond. Forward it to me immediately. I thanked Patricia via text and added her message to my evidence log. May 8th, 12:30 p.m. County Clerk reports HOA still inquiring about easements despite public apology and board directive to cease contact. Pattern confirmed. Tuesday afternoon, I got an email, not from Linda directly, but from an address I didn't recognize. legal@whisperingpineshoa.org. The subject line read, Notice of Compliance Review. I opened it with my screen recording software already running. Dear Mr. Ross, the Whispering Pines HOA Board has initiated a comprehensive review of all properties adjacent to the subdivision to ensure compliance with county ordinances and safety standards. As part of this review, we will be conducting exterior assessments of properties within 500 feet of HOA boundaries. This is a courtesy notice that your property falls within this assessment zone. No entry onto private property will occur. Assessments will be conducted from public right-of-way only. Sincerely, Whispering Pines, HOA Legal Committee. I read it 3 times, looking for the angle. They were being careful now, using legal language and staying off my property. But the intent was the same. Continued surveillance, continued pressure, just repackaged in a way that sounded official. I forwarded the email to Marcus without commenting. He called me 5 minutes later. This is retaliation, plain and simple. There is no legal committee. I checked the HOA bylaws David sent me. The board can't create committees without a member vote. And there's been no vote since Saturday. This email came from Linda or someone acting on her instruction. It's harassment disguised as official business. Marcus's voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. Here's what we're going to do. I'm filing a formal complaint with the Texas Attorney General's office. They have a division that handles HOA misconduct. I'm also preparing a restraining order application. If Linda wants to keep pushing, we're going to push back hard enough that she has no choice but to stop. He paused. I'm meeting with a colleague tomorrow who specializes in HOA litigation. We're going to build a case that makes it impossible for her to continue. Wednesday morning, David Marsh called me. His voice was tense. Ethan, I need to give you a heads up. Linda called an emergency board meeting last night. Didn't notify me or Karen, just her and the 2 other members who barely said anything at the public meeting. They voted to retain outside legal counsel to review the board's options regarding your property. I found out this morning through the meeting minutes she was required to file. I've already objected formally, but I wanted you to know. I thanked him for the warning and immediately called Marcus. He wasn't surprised. Let her hire a lawyer. Any attorney who reviews the facts is going to tell her she has no case. But it confirms what we already know. That's exactly what we need for the restraining order. I'm filing the application this afternoon with the county court. You should have a hearing date within 2 weeks. In the meantime, if anyone approaches your property, even from the street, call 911. Thursday, the certified mail notice arrived. Texas Attorney General's office had received Marcus's complaint and opened a formal investigation into Whispering Pines HOA, 2P5 HOA 1847. The letter outlined the investigation process, the potential penalties for HOA misconduct, and a timeline for findings. Estimated completion, 6 to 8 weeks. I scanned the letter and added it to the master file. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went outside and worked in the yard without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I trimmed hedges, mowed the lawn, and fixed a loose board on the back deck. The cameras were running, the evidence was filed, and the legal process was in motion. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was waiting for the system to do what it was designed to do. Friday evening, my phone rang. Marcus. The restraining order hearing is set for May 20th at 9 a.m. County Courthouse. Judge Morrison presiding. I'll be there with you. Bring the evidence binder, but I'll be doing most of the talking. We're asking for a 12-month order prohibiting Linda Becker from contacting you, entering your property, or directing others to do so on her behalf. Violation of the order is a criminal offense, if the judge grants it, and I think he will, based on what we have. Linda's done. I marked the date on my calendar. May 20th, 9 a.m., the final confrontation. This time in front of a judge with the power to end this permanently. I thanked Marcus and hung up. Then I sat on my porch and watched the sun set over the pine trees. The lights in Linda's house across the subdivision were off. I wondered if she knew what was coming. I wondered if she cared. But mostly, I just watched the light fade and felt something close to peace. The restraining order hearing took 23 minutes. I arrived at the Tarrant County Courthouse at 8:30 and met Marcus in the hallway. He was carrying a leather briefcase and looked ready. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. We walked in and took seats at the petitioner's table. Linda's attorney was already there, a man in his 40s with silver hair, flipping through a folder. Linda arrived 5 minutes before 9. She sat down next to her lawyer and didn't look at me once. Judge Morrison entered at exactly 9 a.m. He was an older man with a calm presence. He reviewed the file, then looked up. "This is a petition for a protective order filed by Ethan Ross against Linda Becker. Mr. Webb, you're representing the petitioner." Marcus stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We're seeking a 12-month order prohibiting Ms. Becker from contacting Mr. Ross, entering his property, or directing third parties to do so." Judge Morrison nodded. "I've reviewed the petition. Ms. Becker, you're represented by Mr. Callahan." Her attorney stood. "Yeah, Your Honor, we're here to contest. We believe the allegations are exaggerated, and Ms. Becker acted within her HOA authority." Judge Morrison looked at Marcus. "Mr. Webb, walk me through your evidence." Marcus pulled out the binder and handed copies to the judge and opposing counsel. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Beginning April 9th, Ms. Becker initiated harassment based on the false premise that Mr. Ross's property was subject to HOA authority. Despite legal documentation proving otherwise, she escalated to in-person confrontations, threatening emails, and 2 criminal trespassing incidents, 37 separate contacts over 5 weeks, 2 sheriff reports, 1 incident of property destruction, a cease and desist letter ignored. Even after a public HOA meeting where the board voted to cease contact, she continued through proxy channels, all documented with timestamps, video, and official reports. Judge Morrison examined the binder, stopping to look at photos and emails. Then he turned to Linda's attorney. "What's your response?" Mr. Callahan stood. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith as HOA president trying to maintain community standards. There may have been miscommunication about jurisdiction, but no malicious intent. A protective order is excessive." Judge Morrison set the binder down. "Counselor, I'm looking at video evidence of trespassing after she was explicitly told she had no authority. I'm looking at sheriff reports documenting criminal activity. This isn't miscommunication. This is a pattern that continued even after legal intervention." He looked at Linda. "Ms. Becker, do you have anything to say?" Linda stood slowly, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Your Honor, I was trying to protect my community. I may have been overzealous, but I never intended to harass anyone." Judge Morrison looked at her steadily. Intent doesn't matter when behavior crosses legal boundaries. You were informed repeatedly you had no jurisdiction. You were asked to stop. You didn't. That's harassment. He picked up his pen and signed the document. I'm granting the protective order for 12 months. Ms. Becker, you are prohibited from contacting Mr. Ross directly or indirectly, entering his property, or directing third parties to do so. This includes electronic communication and social media. Violation is a criminal offense. Do you understand? Linda nodded, her face pale. Yes, Your Honor. We walked out into the hallway. Linda's attorney stopped us. Mr. Webb, Mr. Ross, I want to apologize. I reviewed the evidence last night and advised my client to accept the order without contest. She insisted on the hearing. Marcus shook his hand. I appreciate that. Outside in the May sunlight, Marcus turned to me. That's as clean a win as you're going to get. Congratulations. I felt something release in my chest. Not triumph, just relief. It was done. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from the Texas Attorney General's office. The investigation had concluded. Findings: financial mismanagement, unauthorized expenditures, abuse of authority. Penalties: Linda Becker permanently removed from the board. Banned from HOA leadership in Texas for 5 years. The HOA fined $8,000, required financial auditing for 2 years, restitution of $32,400 ordered, returned to the general fund. I filed the letter with everything else. Case closed. David Marsh called a few days later. I wanted you to know we held elections. I'm the new president. Karen's vice president. We passed a resolution formally acknowledging your property isn't subject to HOA authority and apologizing for everything. We're updating bylaws to prevent this kind of overreach. I thanked him. I appreciate what you did. David, standing up in that meeting took guts. He was quiet. It was the right thing to do. I should have done it sooner. Then he surprised me. If you ever want to come to a neighborhood barbecue, you'd be welcome. No strings, just neighbors. I thought about it. Maybe. Let me get used to the quiet first. David laughed. Fair enough. The offer stands. I walked outside and stood at my gate. The same gate where this had started 6 weeks ago. The property looked the same. Pine trees, fence, grass. Nothing had changed physically. But everything felt different. The weight was gone. The constant vigilance. The documentation. The anticipation. I defended my boundaries not with anger, but with patience and evidence. The system had worked. A week later, an email arrived. Subject: question about HOA issue. I opened it. Mr. Ross, my name is Sarah Chen. I live in Fort Worth, dealing with a similar HOA situation. A friend told me about your case. Would you be willing to share advice or resources? I don't know where to start. I sat at my desk and pulled up the evidence log template, the timeline structure, the resource list, county clerk's office, Texas property code sections, how to file sheriff reports, when to contact an attorney. I attached everything and wrote back. Sarah, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Here's what helped me. Document everything. Stay calm. Know your rights. Use the system. It works if you're patient and thorough. If you need a lawyer, I can recommend Marcus Webb in Dallas. Don't let anyone make you feel wrong for defending what's legally yours. Good luck. I hit send and closed my laptop. Then I poured coffee, walked to my back porch, and sat down. The sun was setting through the trees the same way it had for 3 years before this started. The camera was still there, red light blinking occasionally, but I wasn't checking footage every hour. I wasn't waiting for the next incident. The boundary had been tested. It had held. Now it was just a line again, invisible and unchallenged, the way it should have been from the start. I thought about Linda sometimes, wondered if she understood what had happened. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all. I thought about the quiet, the space I'd fought to protect, the principle that mattered more than the conflict. My land, my rules. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because it was mine, and that was enough. I took a sip of coffee and watched the light fade. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower hummed. Normal sounds, normal life. The kind of peace that's only valuable when you've had to defend it. You just watched someone defend their boundaries the right way. No yelling. No drama. Just evidence, patience, and the system working like it should. If this story hit home, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever dealt with someone who thought rules didn't apply to them? Share your story. And if you want more tales of people standing their ground when power tries to push them around, hit that subscribe button. Karma Fence delivers justice, one boundary